Welcome back to week 1, and in video 3 we are going to get into a little bit of how the atmosphere produces weather as well as how we monitor the weather. So weather is produced because the Earth is an open system in regards to energy. So we get that energy to the Earth's surface to help produce weather from sunlight. So we actually get incoming energy or solar radiation to the Earth that can heat up air, heat up water, cause evaporation, and actually drive these convection currents that we can develop in the Earth's atmosphere, and thus will actually produce weather. So it's kind of basic explanation. So next week we're going to get into more of the details of how this incoming solar radiation actually does that, and then we're going to talk in the following weeks after that about how we can measure the various weather elements that we're going to talk about in the next video. So to give you a quick overview, we're going to talk in detail next week again about this, but if you look at the orange colors over here going from the sun and then into the Earth's surface, you can see if we had 100% radiation leaving the sun, traveling through space to the Earth. Of that 100%, about 26% will be reflected and scattered, and 23% will be absorbed. This is by clouds. 4% will be reflected off the Earth's surface, and then 47% would actually be absorbed onto the Earth's surface. So we have a very less than half of the energy that reaches the Earth would actually be absorbed into the Earth's surface. So this 47% and also the 23% that's absorbed into the atmosphere are what are going to drive that weather. So when we think about, okay, so we absorb this energy, but we are emitting and transmitting energy as well. So the incoming energy that we get is in the form of shortwave solar radiation, and then what actually leaves the Earth is what's called long-wave radiation / heat transfer. And so if we have 100% leaving the Earth, we get various combinations of things on the opposite side there. So we have a lot of it that gets absorbed into the atmosphere, some of it gets lost to space, some of it gets lost directly to space from the Earth's surface, some of it is absorbed into the atmosphere and then radiated out from the atmosphere, and some of it is actually radiated back down. So we have a wide variety of different things that can happen. And we're going to talk about this in more detail next week. So when we have that heat energy reaching the surface, we have things start to happen. Well, we've got evaporation that gets driven off of the oceans or other bodies of water. We end up having heat transferred, so we can actually get the water heating up, causing evaporation, and then we have it cooling, condensing, producing precipitation and clouds. And then we also can have, due to this change in heating, so we have spots where air heats up. When air heats up, it becomes less dense and it rises. When air cools, it becomes more dense and it sinks. We get these convection currents that can develop that produce winds as well. So this is kind of a basic explanation of how we get weather produced on the Earth's surface, and it's mostly driven by the sun. So thank you, sun. So how do we study the atmosphere? How do we monitor what's happening? How do we know what the heck's happening way up in the thermosphere? Well, we know this through a variety of ways. So we've studied the atmosphere through things called radio sounds or weather balloons. Basically, it's an air balloon that a meteorologist, climatologist will release that has a small lightweight box attached to it, and in that box it has a little mini weather station. So it has instruments to measure temperature, humidity, elevation. It has a GPS in there as well. The more modern ones do. Earlier ones did not. They just had radio transmitters that could take that data and send it back to whoever was collecting it. But oftentimes, when these were first being deployed, when they would fall back to Earth, they would have to rely on people to return them, or follow the radio transmission to be able to track down where it is. Now there's GPS coordinates or GPS systems on them so that they can actually track them down much easier than that. So this is one method. So this radiosonde or weather balloon will rise up through the atmosphere and take measurements as it goes further and further up, reaches a certain point where that balloon is just going to pop, and then the small box will then fall to Earth. It has a little parachute on it, so it won't get totally destroyed on impact, and then they can go and reuse all those instruments as long as they find them. We also can use Doppler radar. So this is used to estimate rainfall intensity using radio waves. Here you can see a Doppler radar tower and then the image that is produced, hurricane in Florida. We also use satellites. This can take a snapshot or a video of a storm from space or just weather patterns from space. So here we can see just a picture snapshot of what's called the mid-latitude cyclone here, or possibly a former hurricane. That might be what that is, but it also might be a mid-latitude cyclone. We'll talk about these things in week 8, I believe. And then here you can see a combination of the visible cloud cover, and then also the colors are showing you infrared variations that will actually tell you the intensity of that cloud cover. And then we also have weather stations. So these are going to be put out around the Earth's surface, monitored and kept up by various agencies. There are some that are monitored and kept up by private companies or just individuals. So we are going to be looking at some data that's collected by someone who lives in town, has a weather station on their house, and actually, lucky for us, will post all the data that is collected by that weather station, which is pretty cool. But most of them are run by NOAA, USGS, mostly NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Association or Administration, and that data will be posted on their websites, and it's actually used in some forecast models that they will be putting out and that we will be examining throughout the term. So those are just some basic ways of monitoring the Earth's atmosphere. We're going to do a miniature version of a weather station where you guys will find a spot on campus and measure different weather elements over time throughout the class, and see how things change as we go into the summer months. So that kind of wraps up atmosphere, how the atmosphere produces weather and how we monitor it. We will get into the 7 major weather elements, which is the main focus of this week's lab, and for a big chunk of the next part of the class.